Hello. In this class, we will discuss the meaning or the interpretation of matter wave. What is varying, what is fluctuating in a matter wave. Let us see. Now, any wave can be represented by mathematically represented by a wave function. In the case of matter wave, we use usually by convention we use the Greek letter psi to for this wave function. So it's a function of, in the case of motion in 3 dimension, it's a function of the three spatial coordinates, let us say x, y, and z, and also it depends on time. So this wave function psi varies with the position in space and also it varies with time. In general, the matter wave function can be complex. It can be real, but in general it can be complex. Let us consider this poem. Erwin with his psi can do calculations quite a few, but one thing has not been seen. Just what does psi really mean? This poem was jokingly written by the German chemist Walter Haeckel, and the English translation is by the famous physicist um, Felix Bloch. Okay, so this poem represents, even now, it represents the arguments, the confusion, the uncertainties in the minds of many physicists regarding the meaning of the wave function. Even now, the interpretation of wave function is being argued by in quantum mechanics by people working in fundamentals of quantum mechanics. This Erwin in the poem, Erwin is none other than Erwin Schrödinger. We will study his contributions in the next unit. So the idea among this poem represents the even now the prevailing idea among the physicists that in quantum mechanics we can do calculations, we can compare with experiments, and quantum mechanics is found to be very accurate theory. It agrees with the experiments, and the theoretical calculations match with the experimental result very exactly. So in a pragmatic or practical point of view, these calculations based on the quantum mechanical wave functions are correct. But what is the meaning of psi is another question. So we will look at the standard interpretation, standard meaning of psi agreed among most of the physicists. But this is not the only way to look at psi. There are other interpretations. There are other ways of trying to explain this psi. Even now, this process is going on, but we will not go into those details. Those interested can look into that. Okay, so let us go to the idea. What is the standard interpretation of psi? So let us start like this. If psi is a complex wave function, then this quantity psi star psi must be real. Psi star is the complex conjugate of the complex wave function. For example, if psi is like a plus ib, where a and b are two real functions, then a plus ib is a complex function. Then what is psi star or complex conjugate? It is a minus ib. Okay. So psi star psi we can use as shorthand notation modulus psi square. So this quantity psi star psi or equivalently modulus psi square, this represents the probability per unit volume in 3 dimensions. This quantity is called probability density. Okay, this probability density of finding the particle at time t in a small volume of space centered on the point x, y, z. Okay, so if you calculate the value of the wave function at some spatial point x, y, z at the time t, then the square of the amplitude of this wave function mod psi square gives you the probability density of finding the corresponding particle around that point at that particular time. Okay, what particle? Remember that this psi is nothing but the wave function of matter wave, which has a particle nature also. So from the amplitude square of the this wave function, we can calculate the probability density of finding the particle around that point. This is the This is usually called the probability interpretation of wave function. If psi square is probability density, then if you multiply psi square with a small volume element dv centered around the point xyz, then what you get is the probability of finding the particle in that volume element at the time t. Okay. So this is in the case of a three-dimensional wave function. In two-dimension, what we say is that mod psi square is, again we use the name probability density, but there it means probability per unit area. In the case of a one-dimensional wave function, probability density, that is mod psi square, means probability per unit length. Okay. So whatever be the way you interpret psi square, that means probability per unit length or probability per unit area or probability per unit volume, depending upon the dimension in which the wave function is defined. If you multiply psi square with the proper element, that is, it can be line element, line segment, or area element, or volume element, what you get is probability. Okay. Now psi is also called probability amplitude. Why? Because psi square is probability density and probability is proportional to psi square. Okay, therefore psi is called probability amplitude, and this interpretation, probability interpretation of psi, was given by the physicist Max Born in 1926. Now let us consider a double slit experiment using electrons. This is described in many books as thought experiment, but it was thought experiment in the earlier period. But in 1976, a team of Italian physicists did this experiment for the first time, and after that, many groups reproduced this experiment. So essentially, what we do is there is a Young's double slit apparatus, and then we fire beam of electrons towards this double slit. Electrons pass through this double slit and they are allowed to incident on a screen. On the screen there is an array of electron detectors, and they record the arrival of electrons on the different detectors. And what we are going to see here is a plot of the counts per second or counts per minute and on the detectors. Okay. So let us have a look at this. So initially you see that you get random spots on the screen, okay, on the array of electron detectors. Okay, some electrons are reaching here, some electrons there, etc. There is no pattern in that. But after a long time of exposure, actually this video is fast forwarded. Okay, for a few hours of exposure has been fast forwarded for convenience of viewing. So after a long time of exposure, what we see is that an interference pattern is built up on the array of detectors on the screen. Okay, these are actually counts per minute. Okay, then it means that you have some sort of bright bands, dark bands, bright band, dark bands, etc. What I mean by bright here is shaded in dark, in black. Okay, that means areas where more electrons are arranged. Okay, that is what we get as a bright, that darkened area. That is actually our bright band. And in between you get white patches where electrons, the electrons reaching the screen are less. Okay. So in addition, in this experiment that they did in 1976, it was ensured that the intensity of the source was low, so that only one electron reaches the screen at a time. Okay. So the interesting thing about this result is that at each instant only one electron is reaching the screen at a time. You can see the random spots on the screen. Okay, electrons are reaching the screen one by one. That random spots also indicates that particle nature of electron. One electron is reaching in one of the detectors. But after a long time of exposure, an interference pattern is seen also. So the cumulative effect of all the counts on the detectors is an interference pattern. The intensity variation is like an interference pattern. So it means that this electron beam is also behaving like a wave. So this experiment is an indication of the particle nature, is an evidence of the particle nature as well as wave nature of electron beam. Now next what we are going to do is, let us try to analyze this experiment in terms of the wave function of the electron beam.
The video of this experiment is available in the internet. You can check that. So let us look at this experiment. So there is a double slit. This is slit 1, slit 2. A beam of electrons are coming. Mono-energetic electrons. Okay, electrons having constant energy. So let us say they are traveling in the x direction. So they are passing through these two slits, and they are allowed to incident on a screen here. Now on this screen, electron detectors, an array of electron detectors are placed on the screen. Okay, so let us say this is one such electron detector. So an array of electron detectors are arranged on the screen. So if an electron reaches the screen, it can be detected by one of the detectors. So this is our beam of electrons. Now the intensity of the electron source can be made very low, such that one can ensure that there is between the slits, double slits and the screen, there is only one electron at a time. Okay, so what happens is, when you keep the intensity of the electron beam very low, one electron goes and strikes the screen. It is recorded in one of the detectors. Then next electron goes and strikes the screen. It is recorded in some other detector. Okay, and if we plot the count, let us say along this axis, suppose we plot the counts per minute, the number of electron counts per minute in detectors, in different detectors. Suppose we are plotting it along the let us say along the x-axis. Okay, this is y-axis. Let's say I am using this. Okay, so if I am plotting number of counts per minute along the x-axis, and the distance along the screen along the y-axis, then the pattern that we experimentally obtain. So if you look at the building of electron counts on the screen, if you look at the video available in the internet, what you see is that you will get suppose these detectors produce some bright scintillation when an electron reaches the detector. Then what you see is different different spots indicating the arrival of the electron at random points on the screen. Okay, so electrons are one electron reaches here, another electron reaches here, another here. So an arbitrary distribution, a random distribution of electrons. But when we continue to expose, when you continue to do this experiment for different for a long time, for hours, so what is seen on the screen is a sort of interference pattern. Okay, how do we say that is an interference pattern? If you plot the counts per minute, it will be something like this. Suppose this is the central line. Okay, so what you see here is, so it goes like this. There is a central maximum. That means in this region, maximum counts per minute are obtained. Then on either side of this central maximum, counts per minute vary like this. So you can see that there are regions where counts per minute is very high. There are regions counts per minute is very low, then high, low, like that. Okay, it is something like a bright band, dark band, bright band, dark band in an interference pattern. So you will see a typical interference pattern after hours of exposure. So even though initially there is a random distribution of electrons, on the screen, seemingly apparently random distribution of electrons on the detectors on the screen, or the counts per minute show a random variation. Okay, after a long time of exposure, after hours, this sort of an interference pattern is built up on the screen. Please watch that video available in the internet. Okay. So this is what experimentally observed. Okay, when you do electron diffraction experiments, even with one electron at a time. Okay, so electron reaching the screen. It is like this is an evidence of we can say the dual nature of electrons. Okay, because arrival of electron at the screen exhibits its particle nature. You will get one electron at a time on recorded in any one detector. So if you look at the counts per minute in individual detectors, okay, at each time the electron arrives, it is recorded in one of the detectors. So that shows that electron is a particle. It is not split up, it is not spread out. It arrives at one of the detectors as a single entity, as a single particle. So that shows the arrival of electron on one of the detectors shows the particle nature of the electron. But what is the cumulative effect of all the detectors after a long time of exposure? What you see is that an interference pattern. Okay, so it shows that this electrons reaching, passing through this double slit and reaching the screen, they exhibit both particle nature because they reach the screen as individual electrons, and wave nature because the cumulative effect is like this. Okay, so let us look at this experiment more closely. Suppose slit 2 is closed and only slit 1 is open. Okay, and again we plot counts per minute along the x-axis. So what we get is the typical pattern that we get is this is the central, the point just behind this open slit. So what you get is a pattern something like this. Okay, so the detectors just behind the open slit exhibit maximum counts per minute. Okay, so we can see that more electrons reach here. So this is expected. Okay. And if we close this time, suppose we close slit 1 and open slit 2. Okay, so now the electrons are passing only through slit 2. They can pass in all directions but only through slit 2. So again what you obtain is a pattern something like this. Okay, so the counters, the detectors just behind open slit exhibit maximum counts. So this is the pattern that we obtain when we close one of the slits, okay, and keep the other slit open. So this is expected. Most of the electrons reach the detectors just behind the open slit. Now suppose we keep suppose these electrons, we can say that let us try to analyze this pattern in terms of the wave function of the electron. Then suppose these electrons exhibit some they have some wave function. Then we know that the square of the wave function, square of the amplitude of the wave function, or mod psi square, is the probability density of finding the electron beam. Let us say psi 1 corresponds to the wave function of the electrons passing through slit 1, psi 2 corresponds to wave function of the electrons passing through slit 2. Then this number of counts per minute on the screen, okay, that is a measure of probability of electrons reaching that part of the detectors, okay, that part of the screen. So if number of counts per minute is large, the probability of electrons reaching that part of the screen is large. Number of counts is small, probability is small. So we can say that the counts per minute is proportional to probability density. Okay, or in this case, if slit 2 is open, the wave function of the electron beam passing through slit 2 is psi 2. So we can say that this is psi2 square, or this counts per minute exhibited here is modulus psi2 square. And the earlier case, if slit 1 is open, slit 2 is closed, and if slit 1 is open, what you get was something like this, and this is psi1 square. Okay. Now suppose both slits are open. Okay. If electrons are behaving like particles, then what we expect is that a sum of psi1 square, mod psi1 square and mod psi2 square will be the resultant count. Okay. So if psi1, if slit 1 is open, what we get is a pattern like this, which is mod psi1 square, proportional to mod psi1 square. If only slit 2 is open, we get a pattern like this, which is counts like this, which is proportional to modulus psi2 square. So if these electrons are behaving like particles, when both slits are open, what we expect is a sum of these two patterns. If we plot the sum of these two patterns, okay, let us see. The sum of these two patterns can be, there will be a maximum here, there will be a maximum here, there is a minimum in the middle. Okay. In the middle point between the two slits, there is a minimum. Okay, because not much electrons reach here when either slits are open. So when you add the two patterns, what you get is essentially something like this. There is a slight dip in the middle. Okay, you will get something like this. Okay, in particular, there will be two peaks just below slit 1 and slit 2, and in between the two slits there will be a dip. Okay, where there is a where there are not much electrons reaching. So we expect that this pattern is mod psi1 square plus mod psi2 square. The sum of these two patterns. If the electron beams are behaving like particles. This is what the expected pattern. But we have already seen that what we observe after the exposure of a long time of exposure is not this. Okay, what we obtain is there is the drastic contrast that we can see with the expected result and the actual result is that at the middle point between the two slits, what you get is not a minimum but a maximum. Okay, so the actual result is something like this. What you get is this we have shown earlier. This type of a pattern. That is, instead of a minima at the middle, you get a maxima, a central maxima, and on either side, decreasing maxima on either side, maxima and minimum. So you, in effect, you will get an interference pattern. Okay, so this is different. This is the experimental result. Experimental result. So this is the expected result if the electron beams were behaving like particles, but the experimental results show that there is some sort of interference pattern. So now the question is, how do we explain the actual experimental result in terms of the individual wave functions, in terms of psi1 and psi2? Let us see. So the experimental result shows the interference pattern, which means that the electrons beams are behaving like waves. Okay. Now, if they are behaving like waves, So we know from the electron beam passing through slit 1 has a wave function psi 1, the electron beam passing through slit 2 has a wave function psi 2. So when these, let's imagine a wave. So when these waves pass through slit 1 and slit 2, they are in phase at that instant. But when they travel to the screen, the array of detectors on the screen, and they undergo interference in different ways, then these waves have to travel different distances to reach different points on the screen. So even though when they cross slit 1 and slit 2 they are in phase, when they reach the screen, because of the difference in distances they have to travel, there will be a phase difference between different waves, between the psi 1 and psi 2. Okay, the electron beams passing through slit 1 and slit 2, they have to travel different distances, so there will be a phase difference. Let us say the phase difference between these two is some phi by the time they reach the screen. And we know that in general these wave functions are complex. So if you use a phasor diagram to represent these wave functions, let us say this is psi 1, mod psi 1. Okay, and this is mod psi 2, and the phase difference between them is phi. Okay, so this is mod psi 1 plus psi 2. Again, if you treat these two beams as waves, how do we calculate the resultant amplitude of the wave when they reach the screen? Okay, we have to consider the superposition between the two waves. So the resultant amplitude at any point on the screen can be calculated like psi 1 plus psi 2. Okay, then what is the probability density of this resultant wave? The probability density of this resultant wave will be psi 1 plus psi 2 square, which is, if you expand, it will be psi 1 square mod psi 2 square plus 2 psi mod psi 1 mod psi 2 cos phi, where phi is the phase difference between the two waves. Now this is the probability density of the combined wave when they reach the screen after interference, the resultant wave. So when there is so these are the separate probability densities. And what about this term? This term gives the interference. We can say this is the interference term. Because of this term, there is an interference between this term is a measure of the interference between the two waves depending upon the phase factor phi. So as phase factor phi changes, the interference can be constructive or destructive, okay, like that. So if, for example, if phi is 0, there is a maximum value here. If phi is 90, this part is 0, okay, there is any destructive interference, we can say. And depending upon the variation in phi, these two individual waves get added up in different ways. So this is the interference term. And so the experimental result of the interference pattern on the screen shows that the experimental result of the variation in the counts can be theoretically calculated if we take this as the resultant intensity variation. Okay, so instead of mod psi 1 square, we know that it is not mod psi 1 square plus mod psi 2 square, the interference pattern, but the interference pattern will be this psi 1 plus psi 2 modulus square. That is, we have to take the modulus square of the resultant wave. Instead of taking the square of the individual waves, we have to take the amplitude of the resultant wave and then take the square of it to get the probability density. So we get an interference term. So this is how we explain the interference pattern in terms of, we can analyze the interference pattern in terms of the wave functions of the individual waves. This interference experiment, we can do one electron at a time. That means even when one electron is passing the slits and reach the screen, okay, it is arrived at the screen as a single particle which is recorded by one of the detectors. But if this process continues for a long time, so each instant only one electron is reaching the screen, but after a long time what we see is the interference pattern on the screen. So the remarkable point about this experiment is that even when only one electron is passing the slits at an instant, we get the interference pattern finally. That means even single electrons are undergoing interference with itself. How do we explain that? We can consider it like this. When a single electron is passing, crossing the slits, okay, there is a probability that it can pass through either slit 1 or slit 2. Okay, then if these are the slits, this is slit 1, slit 2. So when an electron is coming, it can either pass through slit 1 or slit 2. So this psi 1 is the probability amplitude, not probability density. Probability density is mod psi 1 square. So psi 1 is the probability amplitude for this electron to pass through slit 1, and psi 2 is the probability amplitude for the electron to pass through slit 2. So we can say that this wave function, this probability amplitude represents a wave function. So what is this wave function? We can say that it is a probability wave. So these wave functions psi 1 and psi 2 represent probability waves for the electrons. So psi 1 is the amplitude of the probability wave for the electron to pass through slit 1. Psi 2 is the amplitude of the probability wave for the electron to pass through slit 2. So when we see the interference pattern on the screen, okay, when we see this type of an interference pattern on the screen, okay, so one way of saying is that this probability wave and this probability wave undergoes superposition, okay, undergoes interference to form this type of an interference pattern on the screen. We remember that there is only a single electron passing. So the interference is between the probability waves of the electron, that is single electron. This is one way of talking about this interference pattern. Another way of saying is that when the electron crosses this slits, okay, it is actually passing through either 1 or 2, but as long as we are not measuring whether it is passing through 1 or 2, we don't know. So we can say that when the a single electron is coming, it is in a superposition state. Okay, so this is the state of the electron. It is in a superposition state. What is the superposition state? Psi 1 plus psi 2. Psi 1 is the probability amplitude for this electron to pass through slit 1. Psi 2 is the probability amplitude for this electron to pass through slit 2. So the electron has equal probability for passing through either slit 1 or slit 2. So it is in a superposition state or superposed state, this state. Okay, so when this electron and when such single electron comes and reaches the screen, okay, the amplitude or we can say the probability amplitude at the different positions on the screen is given by the superposed state. Okay, then the probability density will be given by, probability density on the screen will be given by, because each electron reaching the screen is in the superposed state. Okay, each electron reaching the screen, it can be in one detector, in another detector, in another detector. It may reach one of the detectors, but is always in the superposed state. Okay, so the intensity variation along the screen is given by the square of the superposed state. That is another way of saying. So we can either say that these two probability waves undergo interference and we get the interference pattern on the screen, even though single electrons are coming. Electron probability waves are undergoing superposition. Okay, we cannot say that this electron splits up into two half electrons and one half passes through slit 1, one half passes through slit 2. We cannot say that, because when the electron reaches the screen, only a full electron is detected by one of the detectors on the screen. So electron is not split up. Electron reaches the screen as a single particle. But we can say the probability waves of the electron passing through the two slits are undergoing interference. The same idea we can say in another way. Each electron is coming and hitting the screen. Each electron is in a superposed state or a superposition state. So the probability amplitude at each point on the screen is given by this superposed state. So probability density or the counts per minute is given by the square of this wave function, the resultant wave function. Okay, this is the idea. Then we can make a counter argument. We can say that okay, since this electron is reaching the screen as a single entity, it is recorded in one of the detectors as a single electron, then it is clearly possible that it is passing, it is not split up. This single electron is passing either slit 1 or slit 2. Okay, so we can argue that when it passes slit 1, its amplitude or its wave function is psi 1. When it passes slit 2, its wave function is psi 2. So since this electron is passing either slit 1 or slit 2, it is not in the superposed state, we can say. Okay, we can argue that it is either in state psi 1 or in state psi 2. We can argue that. But then what happens is, if it is either in state psi 1 or in state psi 2, okay, then let us say if you fire 100 electrons to the screen, one at a time, then each electron is in either psi 1 or psi 2. Okay, so the probability amplitude of one electron reaching the screen will be psi 1, another electron reaching the screen will be psi 2, like that. Then we can always, the probability density will be either mod psi 1 square or mod psi 2 square, or the sum of that two. So that means we have to expect mod psi 1 square plus psi 2 square. Mod psi 1 square, we have to expect this, mod psi 1 square plus mod psi 2 square. If we argue that the electron crossing the slits is passing through either slit 1 or slit 2, if it passes slit 1, then its probability density must be psi 1 square on the screen. Then if it passes slit 2, probability amplitude of that electron reaching the screen must be psi 2, probability density must be psi 2 square. So with that argument we can say that this should be the resultant probability density. That is our argument, but actually what we observe is this, the interference pattern. We know that this is quite different from this. We have seen that. Anyway, but we can continue our argument and we can try to measure through which slit the electron is passing. Okay, this type of experiments are called which slit experiment. Which slit the electron is passing. How do we do that? Let us argue that we can, let's don't worry about the experimental details. But actually, this type of experiment using photons has been done. Okay, I'm not sure whether this is done in the case of electrons, but in the case of photons, a version of this which slit experiment has been done first in 1987. Okay, and after that, many versions of those which slit experiment of photons has been done. So let us argue that we arrange some mechanism, some detecting mechanism just behind slit 1 and just behind slit 2. So if an electron comes and crosses slit 1, this detecting mechanism will find out that. If it crosses slit 2, this mechanism will find out that, and then this electron will go and incident on the screen. Okay, let us consider some such thought experiment. Then what happens is, okay, if we do this measurement, what we find is that if 100 electrons are coming, nearly 50% of them, around 50 of them will be passing through slit 1, 50%, the other 50% will be passing through slit 2. So our argument is correct. These electrons are passing through one of the detectors. But when we do this which slit experiment, what happens is, what we find is that what happens on the screen, what we find is that this interference pattern will be lost. Okay, and what we get on the screen will be a variation like this, mod psi 1 square plus mod psi 2 square, just like we separately open one of the slits and then add the two results. Okay. we get such a result on the screen. It means that, so I have told you that this has been observed in the case of photons. When we try to measure through which slit the photon is passing, the interference pattern is destroyed. The same thing happens for electrons also. So this shows that when we try to measure through which slit the electron actually passes, okay, then it destroys the interference pattern. This act of measurement affects the result, affects the interference pattern. And we can show that this type of destruction of the interference pattern, when we try to measure which slit through which the electron is passing, this happens because of uncertainty principle. Okay, so when we discuss uncertainty principle, we will come back to this experiment and we will explicitly show that when we try to measure through which slit the electron is passing, it will necessarily affect the interference pattern because of the uncertainty principle that we will discuss later. But this is the reason, uncertainty principle is the reason behind that. So our point is that when we try to measure through which slit the electron is passing, then the superposition state is lost. Now the electron is either in state psi 1, okay, psi 1, or in state psi 2. If it passes through this one, it is in state psi 1. If it passes through this one, it is in state psi 2. So when it reaches, when this electron reaches here, an electron passing through slit 1 reaches here, it contributes a probability amplitude psi 1, hence probability density mod psi 1 square. When the electron passing through slit 2 reaches the screen, it contributes a probability amplitude psi 2, hence probability density psi 2 square. So the pattern on the screen will be mod psi 1 square plus mod psi 2 square. Okay. So the point is that when we try to measure through which slit the electron is passing, it is in state either psi 1 or psi 2, and we will get this. Okay, we will get the result as if electrons are behaving like particles. But if you don't try to see through which slit the electron is passing, then the electron is in a superposed state. Okay, as long as we are not measuring, then the electron can be in a state, it is in the state both psi 1 and psi 2. That is the meaning of this one. It's in a superposed state. So when it reaches the screen, all these electrons are contributing a probability amplitude of psi 1 plus psi 2. Hence the pattern that we will obtain on the screen will be mod psi 1 plus psi 2 square. Modulus of psi 1 plus psi 2 whole square, which is the interference pattern.
Let us summarize our conclusions and observations so far. The electrons are detected on the screen as particles at a localized spot at some instant of time. Okay, that is why we get individual spots on the screen. The probability of arrival of electrons at each spot on the screen is determined by finding the intensity of two interfering matter waves. In other words, psi 1 plus modulus of psi 1 plus psi 2 whole square. Okay, that is the probability, that is the intensity of two interfering waves. When we try to measure through which slit each electron passes, this act of measurement destroys the interference pattern on the screen. Electrons behave like either particles or waves depending on the kind of experiment performed on them. It is impossible to measure the wave and particle properties simultaneously. Okay, now we see that on the screen, when you look at individual detectors, electrons are behaving like particles because one electron is arriving at one of the detectors at a time. But when you look at the cumulative pattern of all the detectors, what we see is an interference pattern, a wave behavior. Again, when we make some arrangement to detect whether the electrons are passing through slit 1 or slit 2, then essentially again we are observing the particle nature of electrons. Remember that at that time the interference pattern on the screen disappears. What we get is mod psi 1 square plus mod psi 2 square. That is essentially the cumulative intensity of two separate beams of particles. Okay, so when we look for the wave nature, we see a wave nature. When we conduct an experiment specifically designed to detect the particle nature, what we observe is the particle nature. So it's impossible to measure the wave and particle properties simultaneously. The wave and particle properties are complementary to each other, and this idea of Niels Bohr is known as complementarity. What we have concluded for the electrons are applicable to all other particles. So even though we were discussing the double slit experiment using electrons, it could be any particle. It can be protons, neutrons, or helium atoms, hydrogen molecules. Okay, even in the previous class we have seen that double slit experiment has been done with even large molecules like fullerenes, okay, having 60 carbon atoms. So all these conclusions are applicable for all the particles. That concludes our discussion on the probability interpretation of matter wave. In the next class we will look at what type of wave can be matter wave, okay, or what is the form of its wave function. So the next topic is matter wave packet. Thank you.